Okay, amazing stuff indeed. That is Liquid and Sweet Harmony. So you're very welcome along. If you've just joined us, this is Dig Deep Radio, broadcasting live from University College in Cork. It is Tuesday the 23rd of November. It's just gone 20 past 1. And with me on the line here, I hope, is Rose. Rose, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, perfect.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect. So, Rose, thanks a million. Welcome along to the show. This is Dig Deep Radio. Thanks a million for joining us, Rose. So, just my little caveat here, Rose. I'm not a professional radio interviewer by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just a guy who's in college, who loves music and loves chatting to people. So, thanks a million for dialing in from Belfast.
Well, thank you very much for having me. And I have to say, I'm very impressed with the show so far. I'm loving the music.
Oh, yeah, all the music, Rose. It's great. Well, look, so what we usually do here in the show is we've had the last few weeks, we've had various different political parties in arguing with each other and wanting to like strangle each other. So it's great to have someone on the line a little bit more sort of relaxed and a little bit more artistic. And I just want to tell the listeners just a little bit about your books, Rose, if that's okay. So,
please do,
yeah,
yes.
So Rose is an author up in Belfast, and she's a friend of a friend, and I got introduced to her books during the first lockdown. And, you know, for me, Rose, reading was something that I did it for many, many years. But then, I don't know, ever since the kids came along, whatever, I wasn't reading as much, you know. And I picked up one of your books, the first one that I read, which was Under Your Skin. And it revitalised my interest in reading. You know, I just don't know. I wasn't able to put it down. And can you just tell us a little bit about your process, Rose, and how you make it so appealing, I suppose?
Well, thank you very much for the lovely comments. That's really lovely. You know, because when I sit down to write, my goal is to write a page turner. You know, I want to write something that's got a good hook at the start, that's going to hook the reader in. And then I want to kind of propel them towards the end with various different twists and turns so that they need to find out what's going to happen. But the reader keeps getting sort of thrown in different directions. And so that is my, you know, purpose when I sit down to write a book. It's to entertain, really, and to entertain myself as well, you know, when I'm writing it. So about the process of writing it, well, I just start off with a theme, you know. So for Under Your Skin, it was about, I had been working from home for like 4 or 5 years. And I just started to think, well, you know, this was before the lockdown. What would it be like if you were trapped indoors all the time? And then I started to think about the character and the story behind it. And it just kind of grew from there.
Yeah, amazing. And just, I don't know, like it just seemed like a book that I could identify with, you know, like insofar as it was just sort of day-to-day life, you know, people living their lives, I suppose, you know, and going to work and coming home and just the relationships involved, you know. And that was your fourth book, Rose, is that correct? Or your fifth?
Yes, that's right. Yes. Fourth. Yeah.
Your fourth. That was and tell us about the other ones, the ones I haven't read. This was more sort of true crime, the last two.
Yeah, the first 3 books that I wrote were sort of romantic fiction, and I wrote them in my 20s. And for the third book, a friend said to me, you know, that main character was a real nut job. You know, you could have turned him into a psycho, and that could have been a completely different genre. And I thought, yeah, right enough. And so I just thought, you know, I'm gonna go away and try, because I'd started to read a lot of psychological thrillers, and my tastes had started to change. And so I went away and wrote Under Your Skin, and just found that I really enjoyed that kind of darker side of fiction. You know, I wasn't suited to writing happy endings where everything ties up nicely at the end. I wanted to write sort of things that had a bit more darkness to them and a bit more conflict. And yeah, you said there about kind of real life characters. The other kind of term that's used for psychological thriller a lot is domestic drama. And so I like to write about kind of real life people and kind of put my own put my own experiences into it and my own observations of other people, and try to make it as realistic as I can.
Yeah, and I think you made it very realistic, and I suppose anyone who listens to this show over the last few years will know I'm always having domestic violence advocates in, and something I study in college and something that I'm interested in, and I thought your book really sort of highlighted even just the psychological abuse that can go on in intimate partners' relationships. And one thing I want to commend you on, Rose, is just the speed at which you seem to knock these out. I'm going to put my cards on the table here. I started trying to write something there during the lockdown myself. I love it, but I just tied myself up in knots, like how, if you don't mind me asking, how do you do it with the discipline?
Well, I actually don't spend that much time on the actual writing, to be honest. When I'm writing a novel, when I'm writing the first draft, it takes me about 6 months, but I'm only writing at the weekend. So I tend to set myself a timer of like 2 hours, and I will completely focus on that chapter for the 2 hours. And then I'll put it away and I'll enjoy the rest of the day guilt-free, that I've done the work. But I actually think I feel like I'm a very slow writer in comparison to, a lot of my other author friends, because my first book, I wrote that. It must have been a good 10 years ago. And from the first and the second book were published very quickly. And then there was a bit of a gap, and then the third book, and then I took a real lull. Actually, I took a real kind of I don't know whether you'd call it writer's block or just a dark period, and didn't touch the writing for a while. And then it just kind of came back again, and I just, so it kind of goes in waves with me, so I'm just on a good wave at the moment, I think.
Yeah, and what I really liked about it as well, and this might sound simple to anyone who writes books, or maybe it's a thing, but what I liked for each chapter, like it'll say Kerry up the top, or it'll say Julia and Kyle, so you understand where you're coming from, because I suppose just being technical, I found myself tying myself up in knots going, how do I go from this story to that story? Where's the flow? So it was a real eye-opener for me. And is that something that you saw in other books, or just something that you learned yourself?
No, I definitely saw it in other books, and I tend to enjoy books that are written, in the first person present, because it makes me feel a lot more involved, and it feels like I'm getting inside the character's head. And also for myself, for myself writing it, I can feel a lot more involved with the character if I'm writing in first person rather than third person, and I can just get inside their head more. So, but the trick is to, have very distinct characters as well. So, even though it says at the top of the chapter, Kerry, when you start reading Kerry's chapter, you're immediately sort of into her personality and the way that she goes on. And then the next time you're reading another character, and you can tell this is another character, she's a lot sort of quieter or whatever. So yeah, you like to have kind of characters that are quite different, to sort of compare against each other.
Okay, that's the flow. And if you've just joined us, we're talking to Belfast author here, Rose McClelland, and I've got two books in my hand. Okay, the Out of Your Head, which is the most recent one, and another one, Under Your Skin. They're sort of psychological thrillers. The first one there, Under Your Skin, was published by darkstroke.com, and they've got lovely pictures on the covers. Are sort of inviting. So, Rose, have you any other books lined up in the future, or?
I do. I've got. I've finished another book, and I'm just going through the editing process at the moment, and it's called In Too Deep. I've the cover picked and everything. I'm really excited about the cover. And it's another psychological thriller, and it's got the same detectives, brilliant. Simon and Kerry. And then I've got a seventh book, kind of all plotted out. And ready as well. So yeah, I've been keeping very busy, and then on top of that, I've been sort of starting up an editing business as well. So
brilliant! It's all go. So what exactly, to the uninitiated, what exactly is that, Rose? The editing business?
Well, the editing business kind of started really organically. A very good friend of mine, who I think you know, Angela Dunlop,
Oh yeah, yeah.
she came to me and she said, "Look, I've written this book, but I want your help." And we discussed, how we would go about editing it. So I started to edit her book, and it is being released on the 1st of December, and it's called The Miracles of Mediumship, and it's all about her work as a medium, and it was a fascinating book to edit. So I was editing her book, and anytime I sat down to do Angela's work, I was just so happy. I was like, oh, this is brilliant. I just love sitting and working with words. And then someone else recommended a guy who was looking for an editor. He's called Coach Treggs. And he had written a book called Keep On Moving, and he wanted help with editing it and whatever. So his book is also coming out on the 1st of December. And that was really interesting to edit as well. He kind of really went into the whole mindset behind fitness and things. And I've got several other clients since. So it's something that I kind of want to do alongside, writing my own novels, is editing other people's work as well. And that's just a dream job for me.
Yeah, and I suppose it's like a fresh pair of eyes. Someone will come to you and they've got their story and they've got it in chapters, whatever, and you might just sort of say, maybe this flows better here or there, and maybe you could take this paragraph out. Am I right in saying that that's the sort of the editing process?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I've got an editor who goes through my work, and he does an amazing job with it, and thinks of things that I don't think of. So you definitely need, a second pair of eyes.
Yeah, brilliant. And so, Rose, if anyone's listening and they want to get in touch about the editing, they can find you on Instagram. Is that correct?
Instagram or Facebook. Yeah, great. Absolutely. I'd love to hear from someone who wanted editing services.
Yeah, great. So it's Rose McClelland. I'm just going to spell it out. It's McClelland. Yeah, and another little thing. We'll finish up now in a minute, Rose. Another little thing I liked about your book is my grandmother comes from Belfast, and I'd be very, I'd know the place, and it was just really nice to hear the names of the roads that you sort of be familiar with, and did you grow up in Belfast yourself, Rose, or is where you live now?
No, I'm actually from Dara originally.
Cool.
And then whenever I was 18, I moved over to England for university. So I was in England for about 10 years, London and then Brighton. And so my first 3 books are set in London and Brighton, and then the 4th and 5th and 6th are set in Belfast. So, I do like to write about where I'm living at the minute. They always say that you should write about what you know. So there's no point in me writing about New York, because I haven't got the experience of it,
Yeah. Okay. And Rose, when can we expect the next book to be on the shelves?
Well, I'm hoping to have it out for sort of February time, hopefully. So
great. Okay.
If not sooner.
Okay. Well, I personally really look forward to that, Rose. And thanks a million for coming on the show today. That's Rose McClelland. And hopefully, Rose,
thank you for having me, Dara.
We'll talk to you again, hopefully in the new year. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Rose. Take care.
Bye.
So that's the author there, Rose McClelland, who kindly called into us from Belfast today, and she's got 2 books here that were released recently, Out of Your Head and Under Your Skin, that I'd really, really recommend to anyone. So I'm going to carry on with the music here. This is Dig Deep Radio, broadcasting live from UCC.